My name is Jonathan Alley, and I am currently a sophomore finance major at the University of Arkansas. The work that I chose to research is Return of the Useless by George Wesley Bellows. This work is currently located in Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas. I find this work fascinating due to the aesthetic as well as historical aspects of the piece. George Wesley Bellows was a realist painter from the United States. He became a proponent of showing an unvarnished view of American life, composing many paintings consisting of the lower class citizens in America and life in urban America. Bellows became very popular by using art to express real cultural, political, and social issues in a way that was aesthetically intriguing. Bellows also became famous for painting various works depicting boxing matches. In Return of the Useless, Bellows depicts German soldiers discarding sick and disabled Belgian prisoners from a boxcar. The soldiers were returning these prisoners home because they were no longer able to work in the labor camps. This piece is significant because it played a part in helping steer America closer to joining World War I. This painting was done with oil paint on canvas. Bellows does an interesting thing with the color scheme in that he attempts to keep the mood of the painting somber and gloomy, but still illuminates the atrocities that are being committed. Atmospheric perspective is also used. As your eyes follow the painting into the boxcar, it gets darker and the images are not as sharply defined. There is very little balance in this work, which is done to illustrate the chaotic nature of this event. There are people everywhere, hiding in the boxcar, strewn across the floor, and others staggering their way home. An analysis of this work allows us to gain a unique insight into Bellows' mission in making this piece. It also allows us to view the cultural and social environment in the United States during this time. Keeping in line with Bellows' previous works, he does not romanticize war, but rather highlights the grotesque nature of it. However, looking beyond that, we can see primarily a sociological methodology used in this work. The American public was very resistant to entering World War I, with President Woodrow Wilson's initial call for volunteer troops proving ineffective. This was an attempt by Bellows to show the necessity of America's help in the war. Bellows uses the beating of the innocent to suggest a hatred of violence and sympathy for the oppressed. We can see more of a focus on exposing the anguish and emotion in the faces of the victims rather than a pure historical depiction. This keeps in line with other realist artists of the 20th century who attempted to shine light on atrocity. From a stylistic standpoint, it is clear that this painting belongs to the realism genre, particularly the 19th century realism movement. Realism is an artistic category that attempts to present subjects as they naturally are. The viewer can see the morphose bodies, earthy colors, and lack of exaggeration throughout this work. Keeping in line with other works of realism, this picture isn't exactly a pretty one or one that people enjoy seeing. It is a crude, authentic illustration of the horrors of war. This is a powerful way to create an emotional connection between the viewer and the work. George Bellows was an American pioneer when it came to the realist style, and his views on how subjects should be painted were considered radical at the time. I think in this sense, his painting is similar to work from the classical period of Greece, which focused more on naturalism and painting realistic images. Although the dramatic nature and deep emotion displayed in this work deviates from the classical period and leans more towards the Baroque period, which focused on natural subjects, proportionality, and high emotion. Looking at more contemporary works, it appears that the realists that slightly predated Bellows, such as Gustave Courbet, Henri Daumier, and Thomas Eakins, likely influenced him. Bellows uses very similar techniques that they did: earthy colors, full bodies, and deep emotion. Daumier's The Third Class Coach is extremely similar in technique and mission. Both images are not photograph-like, however they both try to send a social message to the viewer. They both use the coloration to create a gloomy mood, but seem to shine a light on injustice. When looking for a piece to research, I looked at many pieces of art, but Return of the Useless really caught my attention. Firstly, the tone of the title is not one that you normally hear in the art world. Bellows uses the word useless so cavalierly that it really makes you want to learn more about the painting. I think he chose the title to make the viewer believe that he is some kind of heartless, mean-spirited person, but then he hits you with a message about helping humanity. From an aesthetic angle, I really appreciate the color scheme that Bellows uses. He keeps the mood somber, but highlights the evil that is being committed with a shining light. I also think it was a wise choice to not use a geometric approach, but rather using somewhat of a blurred technique when it comes to the figures. This has a similar effect to Courbet's The Stonebreakers, in that it somewhat hides the faces of these people so that we all can relate with them. Finally, I believe Bellows uses art in the most important way it can be used, by using it to address an injustice. Bellows was not only a historian by making this piece, but he was an active campaigner against these atrocities. He used art to help change American sentiment, and thus was part of the movement that eventually brought America into the war. With this piece, George Bellows exemplified how art can change the course of human history, and that's something I really appreciate about his work.